We have been telling people to report stuff that they're seeing. If you see something, say something. However, and this is really important, that doesn't mean that you're seeing something new. We have a whole lot of air activity, whether it's aircraft, whether it is commercially available drones being flown. So just to give you some numbers, over the weekend, we had 120 odd 911 and 311 calls related to drone activity, which is more than we had the entire month of November. So a lot of people are reporting to us. The amount of actual drones being detected by our teams and our software is roughly commensurate with what we always see.
A top NYPD counterterrorism official speaking with WNBC about the recent drone sightings across the Northeast. Yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security, Defense Department, FBI, and Federal Aviation Administration issued a joint statement, which reads in part, having closely examined the technical data and tips from concerned citizens, we assess that the sightings to date include a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, and law enforcement drones, as well as manned fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters, and stars mistakenly being reported as drones. Joining us now.
And entire solar systems. I mean,
Milky Way.
All right.
Orion.
Joining us now.
Wow.
They seem to be moving. Right?
White House National Security Communications Advisor and Assistant to the President, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby. So we're good with the drones?
Well, look, we still got about 100 leads that the FBI is following up on. So, the investigation is ongoing. We'll see where it takes us. And I can promise you that we'll be as open and transparent about what we learn as we can be. But the purpose for that statement last night was to lay down what we have learned in the last week or so with additional detection techniques and capabilities sent up to the region, as well as additional visual observers that the Department of Homeland Security put on the ground up there. And again, everything that we're seeing to date tells us this is normal, legal, lawful aircraft activity, whether it's manned or unmanned.
So, Admiral, how do you account for all these sightings and 911 calls? And what's going on here? Is it, by your calculation, is it this what we heard from the NYPD right there, which is it's actually based on their detection systems, it's the same number of drones or aircraft that are usually in the sky over New Jersey or near New York City. Is that your sense of things, too?
I think it's a couple of things, Willie. First of all, there is an awful lot of unmanned aerial systems flying in U.S. airspace on any given day, thousands and thousands. The Northeast Corridor is one of the busiest areas of the country for that kind of air activity. So that's number one. Number two, look, as this has become more of a story and more of an interest item to people, understandably so, more people are then going out and with their phones and looking skyward and reporting stuff. And oftentimes you'll get 12 sightings for a single aircraft once we're able to corroborate all the information. So there's just a lot more people looking right now. And in the wintertime, there's more nighttime sky to look at. So I think it's also important to remember that many of these sightings that you're seeing, the videos, the images, you're seeing lights on these aircraft. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing, flying with lights that demonstrate what they are, who they are, what altitude they're flying at, and again, reinforces the idea that they're flying legally and safely.
And it's not just people from Jersey in their backyards with their cameras. We had a sitting member of Congress, a Republican from New Jersey, say he had said this on national television, that there was an Iranian mothership that had launched a bunch of drones. Do you have any reason to believe that there's foreign action here by any adversarial country?
No, sir. We've looked at this very, very hard, the Department of Defense and the United States Coast Guard. In fact, the Coast Guard put additional resources at sea off the coast there to check that sort of rumor out, to make sure that that wasn't that it wasn't happening. And of course it wasn't. So there was no truth to that. And again, we've seen nothing in the information that we've collected that leads us to believe there's a national security threat posed by these sightings. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't still sightings over military bases here at home and overseas, and we take that very seriously. But that's separate and distinct from the immense amount of sightings that we've been seeing along the Northeast Corridor the last few days.
So, Edmund, what happens if a drone wanders over a military site that has sensitive information?
The Defense Department has the authorities to defend their installations, to look after their security of their people. We have ways that we can deal with that.
Can you shoot it down?
I want to stress, though, Joe, that there's gaps and seams in our authorities writ large, and we really need Congress to act. The president's calling for a bipartisan commission to take a look at this. We've proposed legislation. It's gone nowhere on Capitol Hill, but there are additional authorities we need.
What about, is it a crime? Like, for instance, I grew up in a district that had 5 military bases, and at one of those bases, they experimented with new weapon systems. It should be a crime, I would think, for somebody to fly a drone over that military base. Do you know of any laws that make it a crime to do that? It is
a federal offense, and we have, as I think you know, there have been legal action taken against some actors, including a foreign actor in one case who attempted to do that, to take imagery flying over a military base. Yeah, it's absolutely a crime, and it can be dealt with.
All right, so you're saying right now you guys are staying on top of this. You don't see any foreign interference, no interference from occupants of interplanetary crafts. Good. Check. Let's go to Syria now. Obviously, nature abhors a vacuum. There's a massive vacuum in Syria right now. What's the United States position on what needs to be done in that region?
There's two things that we're really keenly focused on. First is, of course, maintaining a presence in eastern Syria to go after ISIS. ISIS loves a vacuum. We have seen that in the past. They love nothing better than ungoverned space so they can try to revitalize and reconstitute themselves. And we have been seeing additional ISIS activity in Syria since the events of a week or so ago when Assad left. So we want to keep that presence on the ground. We want to keep that partnership with the Syrian Democratic Forces to continue that counter-ISIS mission. The U.S. Central Command, the command in charge of the Middle East, actually took some additional strikes yesterday against ISIS targets. So this is an active, very much an active set of events here and a mission that we're on. The second thing we're focused on, Joe, is working with the international community as well as the opposition groups inside Syria to make sure we can see a peaceful transition to some form of governance that meets the aspirations of the Syrian people. Because we believe it's not only in our national security interests that ISIS can't reconstitute, but it's in our national security interest that Syria becomes sovereign, stable, and secure, and not pose a threat to its neighbors going forward. So we're working really, really hard on the diplomatic front to make sure that all the countries concerned, as well as the opposition groups, are moving in the right direction and trying to meet those aspirations of the Syrian people.
Admiral, good morning. I want to get the White House's assessment on Russia's now presence in Syria. Obviously, a deep relationship for a long time. Assad sought refuge now in Moscow. Conflicting reports of the status of Russian bases there, including a naval facility. It's one warm weather naval facility. What is your sense there as to whether Russia is going to be able to maintain that active military presence in Syria?
I think it's an open question. I mean, obviously the Russians need to speak to their military operations and what they want to do or not do. But I think it's very much an open question. They were there for two reasons. One was to prop up Assad and make it easier for him to commit atrocities on his own people, and two, to maintain a presence in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. They had a naval base there, and they have an air base a little bit further inland, and then some other smaller camps and facilities, but those were the two big ones, because they wanted a presence there in the Eastern Med, and I think they still want to keep that presence, Jonathan. I think the information that we're getting is that they would like to stay. But they have also, given the uncertainty, we've seen them remove some of their forces and some of their resources out of the region, again, because it's a little uncertain, and they want to make sure they have at least a modicum of force protection for what they have left. So I think it's going to really remain to be seen what the transitional government decides to do about foreign military presence in the country, particularly about what they do with the Russians.
White House National Security Communications Advisor to the President, retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.